Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Haley Deshane and I'm the events coordinator here at Eco Canada. Welcome to Turning Policy to Practice, highlighting the City of Yellowknife's energy efficiency building bylaws. Before we start, I would like to take a moment to recognize the traditional Indigenous lands where Eco Canada's office is based in Calgary. At Eco Canada, we're committed to working towards respectful acknowledgement, collaboration, and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples across Canada. This starts with acknowledging our honor and privilege to live and work within the Treaty 7 territory. Today we are presenting from the City of Calgary, home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. We would also like to take this time to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Niitsitapi, home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina and Goodstoney, which include Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Eco Canada for inviting me to present to you today. I met Pooja from Eco Canada up in Nunavik, up in the Beaufort Delta region of the Northwest Territories back in June at a conference called the Arctic Development Expo, and we started chatting and reconnected after the conference, and thought this might be a good opportunity to share with folks throughout Canada some of the work that's happened up here in the Northwest Territories and specifically in Yellowknife. Just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Yellowknife. Lived here pretty much my entire life. So I did go to high school in Ontario and university in Montreal, in Quebec. When I came back to Yellowknife, I had developed a bit of an interest in politics. And when I was about 27, I decided to run for Yellowknife City Council. So I was elected as a city councillor in 2003, served 3 terms, 9 years on city council. And in 2012, the mayor of the day announced that they wouldn't be running for re-election and encouraged me to consider it. So I threw my hat in the ring, ran for mayor in 2012, was elected, and then re-elected in 2015. So spent about 6 years in the mayor's office here in Yellowknife. 2018 rolled around, which was towards the end of my second term in the mayor's office, and determined that I needed a break from politics and wanted to look for something else. And it just so happened that the executive director's position at the Arctic Energy Alliance had come open, so I put my name in for that. And so I've been working for the Arctic Energy Alliance ever since the fall of 2018. Next slide, please, Haley. Just a little bit about the Arctic Energy Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization. We were established in 1997 by the government of the Northwest Territories. And at the time, the territorial government had a number of energy-related programs spread across several different departments. So the decision was made to consolidate those programs under one roof, to create a nonprofit society, which ended up becoming the Arctic Energy Alliance. It could be a little bit more flexible as a public-facing service delivery agency, a little more flexible than government could be. So we've grown substantially over the years. We have our headquarters here in Yellowknife, but we also have regional offices throughout the NWT, including in Hay River, Fort Simpson, Betchiko, Norman Wells, and Inuvik. And those regional offices are really key for us. We are a territorial organization. We deliver programs and services territorially. So those offices throughout the Northwest Territories ensure that we can deliver programs equitably to all 33 communities in the Northwest Territories. As an organization, we deliver a number of rebate programs for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. We have a technical team who conduct home energy evaluations under Natural Resources Canada's EnerGuide rating system. We also do larger building energy audits. And we also do community energy planning with communities across the Northwest Territories. And community energy planning is really where I personally kind of entered the energy space back in the early 2000s as a city councillor with the city of Yellowknife. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of information. The Northwest Territories is a bit of an unknown gem in Canada. We're comprised of about 33 communities. We have a total population in the territory of about 43,000, spread across 1.1 million square kilometers. So the diversity of both the people, the land, the geography of the Northwest Territories is substantial. So, you know, we've got everything from high Arctic communities above the tree line to, you know, communities in the southwest of the territory that, you know, can rely on locally available resources like biomass and geothermal. Where I am right now, Yellowknife, we sit on the Canadian Shield. So depending on the local circumstances, energy use and energy improvements, more importantly, can look different in various communities across the territory. Yellowknife comprises almost half the population of the territory, probably a little bit over half now. So it's quite unique in the territorial context. And we have communities ranging from 50 people at the smallest to Yellowknife, which today is about 22,000. We also have a number of regional centers, and on the previous slide where you saw our regional offices, that's where the regional centers are located throughout the Northwest Territories. Next slide, please. So I know these days it can be a little challenging sometimes with everything that's going on in the world to still kind of focus in on public policy and what it can do for us. And I want to reinforce, I guess, that good public policy still matters. And when I think about the topic that I'm going to be speaking with all of you about today, I think about the long-term impacts and effects that good public policy can still have. My partners and I, as I mentioned, I went to university in Montreal. My partner and I had the opportunity to go for about a week vacation in Montreal this past summer in July. And I had to say one of the things that stuck out to me was how much the cycling culture has grown in Montreal since my partner and I were both students there in the mid to late 90s. And that is, you know, very much the result of deliberate public policy choices made by municipal and provincial governments in that part of the country. And the one thing that will stick with me from our rather brief visit to Montreal was, you know, going for a walk one day around 5 o'clock when people were getting off work. And the cycling infrastructure is you know, probably second almost to none in Canada at this point. We were taking a walk down sort of a side street, and in the span of walking about 3 blocks, we probably had about 300 to 350 cyclists pass us as we were walking. So it's clear that these choices that now probably date back, you know, a couple of decades at least, have now materialized into significant improvements in active transportation in the city of Montreal, and you know, the types of amenities that residents of Montreal can enjoy. So I guess my first point, public policy, good public policy still matters. My experience with community energy planning in Yellowknife began with an administrative inquiry I made at my first city council meeting in late 2003. And the city of Yellowknife had been a member of the Partners for Climate Protection program, a program that was locally delivered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And we'd been a member of that partnership since 1997. And being part of that partnership meant that communities that were engaged with that were committed to creating community energy plans. But for whatever reason, Yellowknife had not endeavored to create a community energy plan following joining that organization. So my first administrative inquiry in a council meeting was to ask our city administration why Yellowknife didn't have a community energy plan and what it would take to get one off the ground. So that first question at a council meeting sparked a conversation amongst myself and my fellow city councilors, as well as with our administrative team at the city. And we started putting in place the steps to create a community energy plan for the community. One of the things that you know, I think probably everybody on this webinar has experience in is planning exercises that produce a plan and then they sit on a shelf and gather dust. We wanted to make sure that didn't happen with our community energy plan here in Yellowknife. So we deliberately put in a number of recommendations as part of the plan that would carry us through to implementation of the plan and ensure that there was a long-term commitment from the city, and not only from the current day's council, but future councils to see that plan successfully implemented. Next slide, please. So we began our community energy planning process here in Yellowknife in 2005. Altogether, it took about 18 months for us from our very first committee meeting to discuss the plan to the time when council adopted it in late 2006. We used internal funds to fund the plan, and we also were able to access funds from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund. That was really important because it provided us with the resources that we could not just create kind of a general community energy plan, but really dive into a number of topics around renewable energy, energy efficiency, and to do some deeper analysis as part of that planning process, such that when we did complete the plan and had it in front of council, there were about a dozen appendices to the plan that included individual feasibility studies and other types of studies that looked at the various recommendations the plan was making to give us a bit of a lead, a bit of a head start in terms of implementing some of those things. We were also determined to make the committee that was working on this plan over those 18 months very broadly based. So we brought in stakeholders from several different sectors within the community. We had representation from our local Chamber of Commerce, from Indigenous communities that are in and around Yellowknife, from different levels of government. So we invited representatives from the Government of the Northwest Territories as well as the Government of Canada to participate. We had involvement from NGOs, environmental groups, and then we had citizen representatives as well, so members of the public who were interested in the topic. So we brought all those folks together and worked for a good year and a half. Along the way, there were several public meetings and town halls and public consultations to ensure that as we were putting the community energy plan together, we had broad buy-in from the community as a whole. And by the time this arrived on City Council's desk, it had broad public support, and it really sailed through the approval process. One of the things I've always really appreciated and loved about community energy planning, there's a couple things. One, it doesn't matter what your political stripe or your political philosophy is. There's something for everybody across the political spectrum in community energy planning. You know, whether your ultimate goal is an environmental benefit that sees greenhouse gas emissions reduced to help mitigate climate change. You know, there's a lot of recommendations tied to that. Or if you're, a fiscal conservative and you want to see your local government saving money, there are lots of opportunities and recommendations tied to that as well in the community energy plan. The second thing I really like about community energy planning is it is so easily measurable. We're talking about kilowatt hours of electricity used and liters of fuel burned for transportation or space heating or what have you. So it's quite easy in that process where you're going from creating an energy inventory for the city itself and municipal operations, but also the community at large, to creating the plan and then implementing. So you have that snapshot at the beginning of the process to see how the community is using energy, and it's easy to, or relatively easy to, track progress on the success of the plan. And that's something that you can then return to the community with to show that you are in fact making progress and that things are happening, and that, as I said earlier, this plan is not just sitting on a shelf and gathering dust. Next slide, please. I just wanted to take a moment to kind of pause on the topic of energy efficiency. So I know during my time with the City of Yellowknife as a councillor and then as a mayor, and also now my time as executive director here at the Arctic Energy Alliance, everybody wants to talk about renewables. Renewable energy is kind of sexy. There's cutting edge technology is sometimes involved. It's very visible and tangible in terms of solar arrays and high efficiency boilers and wind turbines and things of that nature. But energy efficiency is actually incredibly important as a baseline effort in terms of community energy planning or really any type of energy planning. And you see this with larger utilities in many provinces and territories where the initial focus is on maximizing energy efficiency, because the more efficiently we're using energy, the smaller the size of clean energy projects and installations we need to be able to power and heat our communities. So we do tend here at Arctic Energy Alliance to focus a lot on energy efficiency first before moving to discuss renewable energy systems. And it showed up when we were working through the community energy planning process, because we recognized that the homes and buildings that were being built in Yellowknife at that time and around that time would be with us for 50 years or more. So the energy consumption that those buildings and homes will see over their lifetime is built in from that point. And it's far more difficult and expensive to make a home more energy efficient than it is to build in an energy efficient way from the start. We also recognized that there was a lot of things the city could do directly in terms of its own municipal operations, whether it was incorporating renewable energy into our municipal facilities, looking at opportunities to improve energy efficiency and energy improvement in both facilities and our municipal fleet. And so it was easy to look at those kind of projects and seek funding and implement those things. What can be a bit more challenging, which is the focus of what I'm talking about today, is regulatory changes, which can actually have a far more significant impact long term in terms of how we're using energy and the energy performance of our built infrastructure. So regulatory changes were a bit of a scary thing, because that often requires legislative change. It can involve pushback, and I'll show you some of that in just a moment. But those regulatory changes are really, really important, and in my mind now, looking back, probably more important than some of the individual projects that the municipality undertook. I will say from my experience here with the Arctic Energy Alliance, we've been working very hard for many years now on reducing the territory's greenhouse gas emissions. And we've done some analysis in recent years that shows that energy efficiency projects, so things like improving insulation values, windows and doors to more energy efficient models, higher efficiency heating systems and mechanical systems, moving from conventional lighting to LED lighting, conventional pumps to high efficiency pumps, things of that nature have actually accounted for the bulk of the GHG reductions in projects that we've funded. If anybody's interested in learning a little bit more or seeing some more granular data on that, we have a feature on our website at aea.nt.ca called the NWT Energy Map. And we tracked over the previous 5 years all of the cost savings, GHG reductions, electricity savings, and fossil fuel reductions community by community throughout the Northwest Territories. So in that NWT Energy Map on our website, you can actually click on any individual community in the territory and see over the previous 5 years how projects in those communities have reduced greenhouse gas emissions and reduced energy costs. And as you'll see, it delineates between energy efficiency projects and renewable energy projects. And as I said, energy efficiency projects account for the bulk of those reductions. Next slide, please. So as I get into talking about what the city did from a regulatory standpoint on energy efficiency in its building bylaw, I will caveat everything I'm about to say by saying I'm not a technical person. I don't have a background in building sciences, but I have been a very keen, interested observer for many, many years now. And I've enjoyed the opportunity since I joined the Arctic Energy Alliance a few years ago to learn more about home energy efficiency and sort of the elements of looking at a house or a building as a system. So some of the parameters influencing residential energy use, housing size and type, the envelope, insulation levels, the window types, how much air leakage is happening with a particular home or building, the HVAC systems that are involved, the mechanical systems. Also very important, what the people in those buildings or homes are doing. You know, you can have the most energy efficient home in the world. If you have your window open in the middle of winter, it's not going to do a lot for you. So occupant behavior is also very important. And things like planning principles, which I also learned a lot about during my time with the city of Yellowknife, in terms of how we were planning new subdivisions, how lots were oriented in those subdivisions. That can also have a big impact on the energy performance of the homes that go into those spaces. Next slide, please. So the again, I want to thank Eco-Canada for the invitation to do this presentation, because for me, putting the presentation has been a kind of a really interesting walk down memory lane, kind of going back to my days first as a city councillor and later as the mayor. But it was neat to kind of go back through some old newspaper clippings of the journey that the city took as we were proceeding through the community energy planning process. You know, the headline here says it all. This is from our local newspaper, the Yellowknifer, and I believe this article is from 2005 or 2006. And we were and continue in some regards to be a city of fuel hogs. So the greenhouse gas emission on a per capita basis in Yellowknife at the time that we started working on our community energy plan were double the average for the average Canadian. And so we recognized that, you know, some of that is understandable and to a degree unavoidable. We live in a very cold climate in this part of the country. We have very long, dark winters. And so some elements of it were certainly understandable, but it also presented us with a lot of opportunities to improve how we were using energy. And as I was saying earlier, you know, virtually every part of energy efficiency or renewable energy systems in the Northwest Territories, because of the climate that we have and because of the cost of energy, the very high cost of energy, virtually all of those types of projects will achieve the dual objectives of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also reducing energy costs. So this story came out after we had completed our first energy inventory and determined that we were a city of fuel hogs and that we had a lot of room to improve. Next slide, please. So we, as I said, we adopted that community energy plan in late 2006. Pictured here is Gordon Van Tighem, who was my predecessor as the mayor of the city of Yellowknife. And we adopted that plan and all of the recommendations within. And you know, those recommendations ranged from things we could do within our municipal operations to make our own operations more energy efficient, to try to integrate renewable energy systems into municipal operations. But it also looked at community-wide recommendations. So we didn't want to be limited to kind of a corporate emissions plan. We wanted this really to be a community energy plan. So we adopted it and we kind of hit the ground running with the recommendations. Those recommendations, as I said, ranged from things the city could do within the municipal operations, also regulatory elements such as sustainable planning principles. So how was the city's planning division looking at future growth for the community? At the time, the term smart growth was not frequently used and not particularly well understood. So that shows you how long ago all this was. But we wanted to make sure that the planning department was taking recommendations from the community energy plan and integrating that into their work in terms of how the community was going to grow in the future. And then one of the biggest, most important recommendations was that the city consider amending its building bylaw to incorporate energy efficiency standards into new home construction and new building construction. Next slide, please. In my view, probably the most important recommendation that came out of that first community energy plan was to hire an energy coordinator. So those of you who, well, doesn't matter if you work in government or business or the nonprofit sector or anywhere else, you know that when a new plan comes along, adequate resources have to be devoted to it to ensure success and to ensure a proper implementation. So one of the most important recommendations coming out of that plan was that the city should create a position and hire an energy coordinator who would be responsible for overseeing the implementation of the community energy plan. And so that was actually, it was good timing in terms of the adoption of the community energy plan, because it happened late in the year and right before council was about to enter into budget deliberations. So as we went into budget deliberations, we had a recommendation to create this position of an energy coordinator. And during our budget deliberations, it was right around the time that the federal government was negotiating with provinces and territories about sharing a portion of the gas tax, the federal gas tax, with municipal governments. And so here in Yellowknife, we made the decision at the council level that we would take a portion of our gas tax revenue that was coming from the federal government via the territorial government, and we would devote that to implementing the community energy plan. So for about a 5-year period, we committed to taking $500,000 of our gas tax and devoting it specifically to the community energy plan, including paying the salary of an energy coordinator. And having that person who could work across departments, kind of try to break down the silos as best they could, and really bring all of the city administration along and kind of rowing in the same direction, was really, really critical to making sure that not only were these projects, these internal projects getting off the ground, but some of these more complex regulatory matters were also finding their way onto council agendas. So we all know it's next to impossible to try to have a successful implementation of the plan if you're expecting somebody to do it off the corner of their desk. So having a devoted position at the city to this was absolutely key. Next slide, please. Now, as we were going through kind of the process of looking at implementation, one of the other things that the plan recommended was, as I mentioned earlier, we had a broad-based multi-stakeholder committee that worked during that 1.5 years to put the plan together and to get it to the point where it was ready for council's consideration. Following the adoption of the plan also recommended, with some slight modifications, keeping that committee in place and basically turning it into a community energy plan implementation committee. So the role of that committee going forward was to meet on a quarterly basis. It included many of the same stakeholders as the one that put the plan together. And it allowed a regular channel of communication back to City Council, because the minutes of these committee meetings, the committee had council representation, but it also had the minutes of those committee meetings go on to council to receive those minutes. And so it meant that there was a constant stream of communication going from the folks within the city who were working on implementing back to council to be able to show that progress. And the energy coordinators, part of their job was to support that implementation committee and to be able to report to the committee on a quarterly basis exactly which recommendations in the plan had been worked on and what was being implemented, what was being completed, and what was still to come, and to identify resources that might be needed for future initiatives. So one of the first things we looked at was tougher, greener building standards and incorporating that into our building bylaw. So it was interesting. Those of you who are maybe a bit younger than me, my age or older, remember the good old days of newspapers, where often a lot of the news and information came. We weren't so reliant on social media and other online forums. And so we kind of tracked the progress and ensured that we were documenting it and how the media was communicating the things that the city was trying to do. Next slide, please. Now, not surprisingly, developers in our community were not too keen on the city changing the standards to which they had to build. So we did see significant pushback when we even just started talking about higher energy efficiency standards in our new construction, both for homes and larger buildings. As a relatively small community, we have a relatively limited number of developers. We do from time to time have developers from down south who come into the community, but by and large, the bulk of new development was focused within a group of local developers. One of the benefits of being in a relatively small community is that it's not hard to reach out, to be able to consult and talk to people, developers included, and to try to bring them along sort of in this process. So what the city council ultimately determined, based on a recommendation from our planning department, and the planning department is the one responsible for overseeing the building bylaw, was that we would take a two-stage approach to implementing energy efficiency standards into the building bylaw. First, we would have a voluntary standard that was required as of January 1st, 2009, to be able to go through the process of modeling new construction and then doing the kind of the final evaluation, which includes a blower door test, once a home is built and ready to be occupied. So we put in the voluntary standard as of 2009, January 1st, and the standard didn't become mandatory until January 1st, 2011. So we allowed for a 2-year, 24-month period where builders and developers could work with the city's planning department to see, what the modeling of their plans, their building plans would result in terms of an EnerGuide rating, an energy efficiency rating. And the standard that we used was EGNH 80, EnerGuide for New Homes 80, which is a Natural Resources Canada standard. And it's a rating system from 0 to 100, and 80 was considered a very, very efficient home. So we chose that as the benchmark to use. So we worked with developers over that 2-year period to usher them through the process to see how it would go. And it didn't become mandatory until January 1st of 2011. I should mention here too that during this period, as I was talking to municipal councillors and mayors from other parts of the country, I discovered that other municipalities were also trying to implement standards like this. Many of them were getting challenged in court, and some of those were getting struck down because it was discovered that municipalities in certain parts of the country didn't actually have the legal authority to implement energy efficient building standards. But we took a bit of a strategy of asking forgiveness might be easier than asking permission, which is often something we attribute to the way developers operate in our community. But we moved ahead. We were not challenged legally on it, and so we were able to use that 2-year period to kind of bring the development community along until the standard became mandatory. Next slide, please. So some of you may remember before we had Facebook and other social media, we had letters to the editor in our local newspapers. This was very often where the debates of the day played out publicly. And so here's an example as we were discussing this. Actually, one of my predecessors in my current position from the Arctic Energy Alliance wrote a letter to the editor that energy efficient homes are nothing new, and kind of describing how Yellowknife had a pretty proud tradition of trying to build energy efficient homes. Next slide, please. And in early 2009, just as we had begun the process of creating this voluntary standard, we had our first home evaluated at that benchmark, hitting the EnerGuide 80 rating. This was big for us because it showed the local development community that we were not asking for something that was impossible. Yes, there would be additional costs associated with building to that standard, but the homeowner ultimately would enjoy lower energy costs throughout the life of that home as long as they occupied that home. So in Yellowknife, we have a substantial amount of what we called manufactured homes. So those could be modular, they could be kind of trailers almost. And so those are homes that are built on a, in a factory assembly line in southern Canada, typically in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then transported up to Yellowknife. So when we were undertaking this and engaging with the development community, we knew that we had to, they would need to make modifications to their manufacturing process to meet this standard. So in this case, again, it was great that we were able to see early on in this process that some builders were starting to be able to achieve that standard. Next slide, please. And to the point about manufactured homes, there was a company called Klassen Homes, and so they were able to prove that they could do it. They could modify their manufacturing process and assembly line to be able to increase insulation values, improve the air tightness of the homes that they were producing, and basically, by the time these homes landed in Yellowknife and were sited and put on the lots that would be their ultimate destination, we could then go in and do the home energy evaluations and basically be able to prove that, yes, this standard was achievable. It was a bit of a challenge, but it was important as a community that we were making sure that our housing and building stock on a go-forward basis would be as efficient as possible. Next slide, please. We then had a bit of an interesting, almost kind of competition between builders and developers in the community to see how efficient they could actually get their homes. So pictured here is a very, very efficient home that the builder, it was an owner builder, the person who resided in the home built it, as you can see here with his dad, and built it to an even higher standard than what the city was asking for in its building bylaw. One quick anecdote I'll share from a local developer who was, those who have worked with developers in the past know that they can be a little curmudgeonly, a little cranky at times, but they're in business, and they've got timelines, and they want to be able to meet those and get their product on the market as soon as possible. And we had a developer here in Yellowknife who specialized in manufactured homes. They were built in Saskatchewan, brought up to Yellowknife, and he was probably the biggest opponent of this change to the city's building bylaw. Until, under the new bylaw, he brought a home up for his mother, and his mother was paid a lot of attention to her energy bills, both her oil bill for heating and her electricity bill each month, and would keep a notepad where she would write down exactly what her bills were month to month. And so this developer brought up a trailer for his mother, put it in, and after about 4 or 5 months of his mother then recording and keeping track of her energy costs with this new, much more efficient home, he actually kind of contacted us at the city and said, my mom's endorsed this, and so he was good with it after that. All it took was his mother giving it the seal of approval. Next slide, please. I'm going to move through these slides fairly quickly. This one is not quite displaying. I'll just, it seems to be missing a bit of the table here, but as you can see, 2010 being the dividing line in that chart. So this is based on home energy evaluations that the Arctic Energy Alliance conducted over many, many years. We actually had housing evaluation data going back 50 years. And so you can see that on the left side for about 90% of this graph, you see the variability of the energy intensity, which is the total energy use divided by the total floor area. So there were energy efficient homes being built, but that variability was all over the map. Whereas post 2010, you can see that there's an intensification of that variability in a very much smaller range, and much lower energy intensity of the homes that were built after 2010. Next slide, please. And I think, Haley, I'll move through these ones fairly quickly. Similar to oh, this is the chart I was looking for, actually. So you can see from 1990 to 2007, the energy intensity of homes built in Yellowknife versus 2010 to 2015. And so this data was actually produced by the Arctic Energy Alliance before I was with the organization. But they wanted to do kind of a 5-year analysis of what had happened with Yellowknife's new housing stock since the building bylaw changed. Next slide, please. Oh, I'll get you to go to the next slide, please, Haley. Sorry, there's some animations in here. And I'll get you to click through this one as well. And next. So you can see a big improvement in the ARS rating. And this is getting into some technical details that I won't spend a lot of time on, so I'll get you to click through this one as well, Haley. And you can click through this as well. You'll see a consistent pattern here, which is a significant improvement across the board in virtually every measure of the energy efficiency of these new homes post 2010 from what we had before. Next slide, please. So again, this kind of captures all the improvements that we saw, which was a big win, I think, for the move that council decided to make. Next slide, please. So this one, I'll just pause for a moment because, yeah, and if you wouldn't mind clicking one more time there, Haley. Perfect. So you can see here significant savings both on the electricity and on the heating side in homes. So we estimated that the addition of energy efficiency standards in the building bylaw would probably result in about $15,000 to $20,000 in additional incremental costs to meet the standard. But the homeowner ultimately would be saving almost $3,000 a year. So that's not a terribly long payback period. And of course, that continues well beyond the payback period itself for the life of that home. Next slide, please. So kind of getting close to wrapping up here, but I will say when these kind of measures are put in place, it would be nice to be able to sit back and just watch the improvements they can have from a regulatory standpoint. But the political environment can and will change. And whether it's energy related, like what I've been talking about today, or other things that are tied to sustainability regarding solid waste or water use or what have you, it's important to keep an eye on those policy changes because we all move on to the next chapters in our lives. And we need to kind of make sure that as much as possible, we're not deviating from some of those improvements that have been made in the past. In 2018, Natural Resources Canada changed the way that they calculated and displayed the EnerGuide rating system. So it was no longer a 0 to 100 rating system, but rather a measure of the use of energy in the home on a gigajoule basis. And so the Arctic Energy Alliance, and I was still with the city when this change came down the pipe, but Arctic Energy Alliance put together a lot of really good information for the city to consider. And so the city amended its building bylaw at that time because the 80 rating system, or that previous rating system, was no longer supported by Natural Resources Canada. And so we incorporated into our building bylaw 2 paths to the energy efficiency standard. One was prescriptive, that would spell out the insulation values and things of that nature, air tightness that a home would need to achieve. And the other was performance-based. So using that EnerGuide rating system to meet a certain level within the ERS system. Next slide, please. So before I wrap up, just a quick shameless plug. If any of you have ever thought about visiting Yellowknife or dreamed of coming north for a few days to see the sites, Arctic Energy Alliance, in partnership with the Wood Pellet Association of Canada, is hosting Arctic Bioenergy Summit and Tour here the last week of January. Now, some of you may be thinking Yellowknife is the last place I'd want to visit in January in the dead of winter. I'll just highlight that the photo behind me, actually, as well as the one on the right of this picture, I snapped those just a couple nights ago right outside my house here in Yellowknife. So if you've never seen sort of the full-on light show of Aurora Borealis, it is the perfect time of year for that. And we will be hosting one full day of tours of biomass installations. I was talking about energy efficiency today, but the Northwest Territories is actually the lead jurisdiction in Canada in terms of the adoption of biomass for space heating, wood pellets in particular. So this is an opportunity that we wanted to put on to share some of our successes and to talk about where the Northwest Territories can go from here in terms of incorporating even more biomass into our space heating and ultimately moving away from fossil fuels. So we have a registration page that's up on our website currently. The agenda itself is just being finalized, but perhaps we'll see some of you come visit us in late January, and I will stop there. Thanks very much, Haley.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was awesome. Now is time for the Q&A portion of the session. So if you have any questions, don't forget to put them in the question box. We have a couple already. So first one, are green walls and roofs considered too?
Not within the building bylaw. We have had the federal government, oh gosh, that was probably about coming close to 20 years ago now too. They built a new building in Yellowknife called the Greenstone Building that was intended to be kind of house a lot of federal employees in Yellowknife. They put a green roof on their building. And so it's always been a bit of a question because we have such short summers and such long winters, how much benefit green roofs would have in our climate. So that was something we looked at during the community energy planning process, but it's not something that formally found its way into the building bylaw. But certainly it's encouraged, and we've had some buildings built to the LEED standard, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, is I believe what the acronym stands for. And so there have been green roofs incorporated, but it's been probably less of a focus than things like air tightness and insulation values.
Awesome. Another person wants to know how the father and son were able to make their energy efficient house more efficient than the bylaws.
Yeah, so they really went the extra mile. So air tightness is one of the most important components of an energy efficient home. And so, generally for a high efficiency home, the target is about 1.5 air exchanges, meaning all of the air in the home is exchanged 1.5 times per hour. And so they really focused on incorporating, of course, with that much, when your home is that airtight, you need to be cognizant of ventilation to make sure that you don't run into moisture problems and mold and things like that. So they incorporated much higher insulation values than would be needed for EGNH 80. At the time too, that system, or the way the rating system worked is it attributes a certain number of points for different elements of the home, including mechanical system and heating appliances. And so I believe in that case, generally speaking, for a heating system, you could get the most points out of a high efficiency propane system. And they actually, because the envelope of the building was so tight and so well insulated, that they opted for electric heat. So they saved themselves sort of that element of the building process as well. So they were, well above and beyond what anybody else was able to achieve at that time. And it was a process and a project where they were very passionate about how energy efficient their home was going to be. This was where the family was going to live and raise their children. And so they made sure that from plan to building to final construction, they really went above and beyond what was needed just to achieve the EGNH 80.
Awesome. Another person's asking, what are the key tactics to consider using when managing stakeholder pushback?
Yeah, that was really interesting, and I think we, maybe without even knowing it, we put ourselves on a really solid footing as we were constructing the community energy plan itself before we even contemplated changes to the building bylaw or anything else. So we made sure during that 18-month process that there were numerous opportunities for the community to come together, and we talked about regulatory changes during that process, because developers are a big stakeholder in the development of the community, but they're not the only stakeholder. And the people who live here and the people who are going to live in those homes and the people who are going to pay the energy bills for those homes, they also have a big stake in that. So we started to build momentum towards people actually talking to developers, members of the public talking to developers, those who potentially might be moving into a new home at some point in the near future, and starting to engage developers in how energy efficient is my home going to be. When homes are put up for sale, at least here in Yellowknife, one of the things that's listed is the total oil consumption for space heating in a year. And that can be, some people are paying more in energy costs per month than they are on their mortgage themselves or itself. So we built that momentum in terms of community support to make sure that it wasn't just sort of council maybe butting heads with the development community, but that there was a groundswell of support for what the city was trying to accomplish. And so by the time it kind of landed on council's desk to take a look at the actual language of how a building bylaw would change, we had people who would register to present to council. So we always have an opportunity for presentations to council on anything that's on an agenda. And so we had a number of people who came out strongly in support of making these changes. And so, as an elected official who answers to the voting public, that was really important to show that this wasn't council all on its own out there kind of doing crazy stuff. There was actually support for this in the community, and that, again, recognizing the high cost of energy here, this wasn't just an environmental initiative. This was there was economic benefit to this and cost of living benefit to it as well. So all of that really kind of helped us to get to the point. And then also, in the early stages of implementation of the bylaw itself, talking to those developers who did in fact have a keen interest in energy efficiency. And there's lots of developers and builders and people in the construction industry who, they love the idea of energy efficiency, and they want to make their projects and their buildings as energy efficient as possible. So, in some of the newspaper clippings there, you saw examples of people who were kind of early adopters before it was even a mandatory standard. And once you can show that, this isn't impossible, this is, not easily achievable, but certainly achievable, then those who are still pushing back, they've got less of a leg to stand on. So we found that kind of building that momentum through time, right through to adoption of the bylaw, really helped kind of mitigate the pushback we might have otherwise seen.
Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah, definitely including the economic long-term benefits for these bylaws is definitely how you can help with stakeholders and pushback and things like that. And I think that also is a great tip for anyone who's looking to implement bylaws like this in their own community and things like that. That's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you so much, Mark, again, for your presentation and for answering these questions. And thank you everyone for coming today. It was great to have you. Look at our events calendar to see upcoming webinars we have later this month and next month. And also check out the Arctic Bioenergy Summit and Tour that Mark highlighted before. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Haley. If anyone else, has any other questions, I'm easy to find online, so feel free to reach out anytime.